Today's episode is sponsored by Steiger Dynamics. To help support the podcast, please check out the links in the show notes or in the description below the video, depending on where you're watching or listening. Hello, friends, bass players. What's happening? Musicians of the world. It's the Janek Gwizdala podcast. So much to get into. First and foremost, I got an email from Peter Erskine, who you may have remembered I interviewed a couple of weeks ago for the podcast, and he had mentioned playing on this Rick Margitza album, Blue Note album in the 90s, and had he misremembered who the guitar player was on it. It was Steve Masakowski. He wanted me to put a quick correction in the podcast about that. It's also an amazing album. I'll link it in the show notes and in the description of the video. Rick is a good friend of mine, and we used to play a bunch together in New York and stay in touch now and again. He lives out in Paris, but that's a beautiful album, one of my favorite albums of all time. And like Pete said, one of his favorite albums to play on and one of his favorite songs of all time on that record as well. So definitely worth checking it out. That's the correction. That's the housekeeping out of the way. Let's get into some other stuff. Whoa, the camera is freaking out. What's going on with the camera? Wow. Really freaking out. Very strange. Camera was shuddering there. I got it on the slider here. Wonder what's going on with that. Maybe we give it a little pause and maybe restore. Okay. I've been out of the studio for so long and like firing up all the gear that I haven't used in a couple of weeks. It's probably user error on my part. I always default to that. It's normally if something is going wrong, it's generally down to me. But I've never experienced that. Hopefully we're okay for the rest of the episode. Had a weird one at my gig on, when was that? Thursday, a few days ago now. Threw on some new strings right before going to sound check. So brand new set of strings, which is anyone who listens to the podcast or follows me, you know that is nothing weird at all. I like to change my strings a lot. But something happened, and I'm not sure what, with the tension. And it felt like maybe it was a C string that was mislabeled and was actually a G. Like the G and the C strings felt really similar in gauge, and the tension felt a lot tighter, which that would, story would check out if that were the case. But I put them on the magnifying glass. They're definitely different tensions. So I don't know. After all these years, I'm still finding weirdness in, it happens to all of us, no matter how much you think you know your gear or no matter how long you've been doing it. There's always potential for something weird to crop up like that. It kind of never ceases to amaze me that is always an option, and you kind of get complacent. I get complacent a little bit with the pedals. I give the TSA and baggage handlers way too much credit at the beginning of a tour, like, oh, it's going to be fine this time. And you get like 3 shows in and 5 flights, and you're like, oh, Pedalboard's destroyed again. So yeah, it's definitely got to come up with a new solution for the Pedalboard. That's going to be a video coming in probably about 6 weeks' time as I get geared up for some summer touring with Vital Information. That's going to be a bit of a project, trying to really guard against people who throw your shit around mercilessly when it's in transit. Man, so there's something going on every time the camera gets to the same place. I wonder why that is. There's something weird going on with it. So for people watching on YouTube, you might think there's an earthquake happening. If that does it on the next pass, I'm just going to stop it in the middle and leave it stationary. Still experimenting with this stuff and seeing how much sort of production value it brings to the podcast. Not sure yet. Definitely bought some to some recent videos. But yeah, what was I saying? The Pedalboard, yeah, definitely need a solution to where things, I mean, is it almost where I've got to like put put bolts through the base plates of the pedals and literally screw them to the pedal board. It's not the fault of the pedal board. I dig the Vertex Effects board with the riser on it. It's been fantastic. Just everything kind of gets shaken up so much. I was either reading or watching or listening to something about American football players, how, you know, wearing a helmet is whatever, because the helmet will really only stop you getting lacerations, you know, getting like open wounds when you get hit. The head, the brain is still, and hey, I'm not a doctor here, never went to school, didn't take any classes that would give me any authority to speak on this, but as far as I know, the brain is sitting in some kind of fluid, and if you take a hit to the head, even if you're wearing a crash helmet, whereas it might help you not get, you know, your skull split open, the brain is still going to take a lot of pounding inside as it bounces off the skull. And I kind of feel that's what's happening with the pedal board. You know, I have this amazing Pelican case, the 1510, which is super rugged, but it's no use if the TSA people actually open the case and never clip it back together again. A couple of weeks ago, arrived somewhere, I think it was Medford in Oregon, and the Pelican case was literally open. Like both clasps were undone and the lid was off, and there was a pedal on I think the volume pedal was out on the conveyor belt, and the pedal board was spewing half out of the Pelican case. So it's just, I need a solution. If anyone has ideas, if you have some experience in this, not that I don't have experience, that's the frustrating thing. I've been doing this for years and years and years and still haven't come up with the ideal situation. Maybe it's more foam. Maybe I should have like a real kind of like foam insert, like a cutout, perhaps to go under the rider and inside the lid of the Pelican case. Maybe that is okay. So this slider thing is not happening. We are going to pause. Just going to leave it right there. So I apologize to all the people watching on YouTube that felt the earthquake happening. I'm just going to leave it right there in the center for now. Troubleshoot after I'm done filming. Yeah, I'm not sure if it's a foam insert. Maybe some people out there are using that to really keep things locked in. That sounds like it will be complicated to make and will be that's the other thing. It will be ever changing depending on which pedals are on the board. So even that I see as a good solution. I don't see it as a perfect solution, because if I want to switch out a pedal or change the board, which I'm about to do, then I've got to recut a new foam thing, which is kind of a pain in the ass. I'm also thinking and feeling like I want to go back to having the MIDI switcher on the board. It'd be really useful. I miss that sort of the multi-layered functionality of the HX Stomp and the H9. I feel like I want deeper access into both of those units. I'm kind of using the H9 just for reverb and using the HX Stomp just for harmonizer, when both of them can do like a million other things. So maybe I've got to give up the mood, or I've got to give up the dark world, or some pedal, some combination of pedals, and bite the bullet and get that MIDI switcher back on the board. There's always that thing of like limited amounts of hand access. Then if you commit to like foot access, you sort of diminish the hand access. The twiddling of knobs sort of becomes less and less. So I don't know. There is the option of having the iPad for the H9, having the iPad up on a music stand or something. I've just always shied away from having any kind of tabletop desktop thing. I really hate that. I also think it takes away from the performance as well. So yeah, it's a weird one. Something I've definitely got to troubleshoot, and we'll have kind of limited time to do it, unfortunately, as I prepare for the new album. And I would love to just have a set pedal board in the studio when we go to Argentina to record in August, but it's probably going to end up being a little more like it was in Spain last year, where I take a couple of Pelican cases full of loose pedals and build sounds on the spot as the need comes up. It's not going to be as straight up improvised as the last album. I'm actually going down there with a lot of written material, or at least I will be going down there with a lot of written material once I've written it. So I'm really kind of looking forward to the compositional element, which after this month of mayhem, I think April kind of signifies the end of the chaos. I actually get May and half of June to really sit down and dig into the writing I don't know how many people read or heard or saw the most recent Substack post about what you can get out of listening to yourself. I know I talk about that a lot, recording your practice, recording your gigs, and how that affects my process and how I use that feedback to improve my playing. But if you go on, janekgwizdala.substack.com, it's linked below, it's in the show notes, it's in the video description. You can check out that post. And I kind of break down a little bit what I'm hearing in my performance and what I can do to improve upon it, and how it helps me build confidence when it's a positive thing. I was highlighting a positive moment where I was like, oh, I remember there being something good about that, and I remember getting to something new, feeling quite free in the moment on stage, which can be rare sometimes if you get in a bit of a rut and you're sort of forcing the issue. Finding a moment of freedom is a great thing, and that's what I felt. And I listened back. I've been getting in the habit of putting the iPhone up close, sometimes on a music stand or just close by, and hitting record. So I actually have it in the phone. I don't have to go through the process of extracting the audio from the video camera and using the computer. I actually have it like right there immediately, and just labeling it well in the voice recorder and going back and maybe starring things or favoriting things that I want to go back and listen to. And that was a positive moment. And as I'm sure you're aware by now, I'm no stranger to sharing negative moments as well. I think they're just, if not more important than the positive ones, because I think you can learn a lot more from them. It actually gives you something to work towards, an issue to improve, an issue to find a solution to. But this one happened to be a positive one. So go check that out. You can dig into that kind of process in detail. And all that to say, the reason I'm mentioning that is that what I have been doing, even though I haven't sort of sat down and had dedicated writing sessions for the new album yet, I have been chopping up little clips and little ideas and putting them in a folder in the phone. So it's just labeled Argentina, and I can keep going there and shuffling things around and getting an idea of where am I going. Do I want to go more this direction, more that direction? And there are some incredibly diverse things in there. There's some like genty kind of almost periphery animals as leaders ideas that I was working on maybe 3 years ago in the beginning of the pandemic. That was something I'd never had the time to explore that sound personally, and using the dark glass stuff and really tuning the bass down and playing with a heavy pick, and checking out people like Adam, Nolly Get Good, and just that kind of sound. And it's always been in my ear, like having known Tosin for quite a while, for 10 years or more now, Tosin Abassi from Animals as leaders, and kind of got the time, we all got some time off there, 2020 especially. So I've actually dropped a couple of those ideas into the Argentina folder. Even though like my the overarching thing that I'm thinking about is actually writing for a choir and trying to translate all these beautiful voicings into voices and add the trio to that, with some pretty in-depth composition. So not only is there sort of heavy, genty, kind of detuned kind of stuff, but there's some quite delicate things there as well. So I'm just building that little folder again, even though I haven't like written a song for the album yet. That's sort of the progress, how I'm able to make progress when everything else is so insane. And I can get on the plane, and as I have been traveling the past few weeks with Steve, and really dedicate some time to listening and sort of gathering my thoughts and finding a focus. And of course, that is all subject to change as well. I might go to Argentina and throw it all out the window and start again from scratch right in the moment. I don't know. But at least this time, my concept is to be more prepared compositionally. That at least right now, as I speak in the middle of April, April the 10th or something right now, 2023, that's where my brain's at. And what I'm going to do with the Substack, with the blog, is kind of give some updates, through April, May, June, July, like these 4 months. I'll be able to update you. I'll be able to share demos, and there's some pretty, I'm going to be pretty exposed on these demos. They're rough around the edges, but if you haven't already signed up for the mailing list, do that, because that is where I'll be sharing those things, and you'll get to see exactly what happens. I'll sort of let you inside the process in real time. And we could go from, some just picking 2 notes on the instrument. It could be really that simple. That's often how a composition starts, you know. It's really weird. I'm not sure if it's the new headphones. Let me take one ear. Yeah, it's really weird. This tension, the string tension thing is really bothering me. I'm not sure what is going on. I think I probably need a setup and to sort of just start from scratch again with a new setup. Not a new bass. I mean, just having this bass set up by a professional rather than all of the crazy temperature changes it's been through with the minus whatever up in the Northwest and then out in the desert in Arizona and up at altitude in certain places. Yeah, like it's been through the mill. And then I'll go to the East Coast in June and it will be super humid and we'll be driving the entire tour. So it's going to be interesting how it holds up and exactly what the issue is as well. I might try. It's so weird that C string is just so, the tension is so much. I got to believe that's a G string and it's just been mislabeled, the single string. That really is what it feels like. It's so fucking weird. If I had one close, a C string, I would change it right on the podcast here and let you know. And it's just the sound is weird as well. I think that the action has come up even higher and it's really not close enough to the pickup. So kind of, even as a thicker string, it gets sort of thinned out in the high end. Yeah. Oh, so weird. So what was I talking about? Yeah, the recording and that whole process. I think it's important to be aware of, or let's see. Everyone is different, first of all. So let's preface this by saying that, and there's no sort of one size fits all. I just think that sometimes, and I don't think this, I know this because this sort of describes me early on. This is why I made so many albums and didn't release them because I wasn't happy with them. I didn't throw them away and still go to the studio and make music. I really just like focused in on this is the album, these are the tunes, and our time has to be spent doing this, even when it was quite clear in the moment sometimes that the tunes weren't working out and that wasn't really the right sound or the right approach. I think people don't often understand that you can bail on the idea at any time, and you will probably benefit from that hugely. I'm going to guess that. Isn't there something like that if you're offered a what is it? If you are offered a choice of 3 things and you choose, I'm saying this all wrong. This is like such in the recesses of my mind that I've read about this. Basically, if you're given an option, like let's say there were 3 cards and one of them is green and 2 of them are red, and you have to find the green one. If you pick one out of the 3 and it's not the green one, it's the red one, and then you're given, I'm saying this so upside down, but basically it means if you change your original choice, you have a higher chance of a favorable outcome. I think that's what I'm getting at here. Maybe I'm completely full of shit and I'm misremembering it, but I think that's basically what I'm getting at, is if you change your original choice, you have a much higher chance of a more favorable outcome. And regardless of my bullshit analogy or wherever I'm dredging that up from in my brain, that's how I feel about the recording process and about going into the studio and about making music. I always am ready to just let go of everything and leave it behind and actually not even be married to generating more information myself, but be open to suggestion from other people. I know that I've written for voices before and done a lot of like close vocal writing, but more in a pop sense or a commercial sense. I've never really done it for this kind of choir, like this kind of Eric Whittaker style, probably going to be an 8-piece, 4 men, 4 women, and then layered maybe up to 24, maybe 32. I'm not sure. It's going to sound quite big, but very delicate. So I've never really done that, especially not for myself, for my own music. As if you've listened to any of my music, there are only vocals on like 2 or 3 things I've ever put out, 2 or 3 songs, literally not even albums. So I know that when I go to the studio, I'm going to be, eyes open, ears open, mouth shut, and listening to what other people with perhaps more experience than me in that area have to say about it. And that's just one small example of going into a situation, being aware of the fact that it's not something you've done thousands of times before, and like I'm not a vocal arranger, I'm not a vocal producer that's not my main gig. So I'll take the experience I do have as a producer and the vocal work I have done and try and take on board as much information from other people as possible. And hopefully that will result in the favorable outcome we're all looking for collectively as a group. And it's something I'll discuss with Juan Pablo at great length before we even go in there, my engineer, and figure out, exactly how to achieve the goal based on the framework we're working within, which is the 4 days, which is the specific studio, the singers. What I really want to do is get good demos, good mock-ups before we go, not just for the vocal stuff, but I've been thinking about this a lot. And this is also something cool I can share with you guys as well through the blog, through the mailing list, is what these demos sound like, MIDI demos. I hear people sometimes like, oh no, MIDI demos, the groan, it's just like, it's not music. But what it will do is give like the roadmap of where we're going, and I want to be able to send that to Tom and Nico, and maybe even have them record stuff over it at home. Tom will have at home access to far more instruments than he'll be able to bring with him to Argentina. So if there's a little boutique keyboard that's maybe good for one section of one song, it's not worth shipping all the way to Argentina. But if I have the song form together and I can get him to record that at home, it will be something we can take the audio to Argentina and play live too. So kind of really looking forward to that side of the process. Really, it's a longer process because I'm going to spend some months doing the writing now. But I'm still going to be fairly quick, fairly rapid when it comes to the final production process. From the time we start day one in the studio until the time the album comes out, it's still only going to be maybe 2 months max. And the only reason it's going to be that long is because I'm allowing myself time. Unlike last time, I really set a very, very fast release date after the recording, which was not as bad because it was mostly improvised and I knew I wouldn't have to do much work on it after we left Spain. But this time I'm affording myself a couple of months at least because there are just so many unknown quantities. Like if I get down there and the choir isn't happening the way I heard it, or my writing isn't good enough, I might have to reassess that, perhaps do sessions elsewhere, maybe back here in Los Angeles, who knows. So I'm definitely giving myself a little more breathing space there, a little more work time to get the best result. Of course, I want to deliver the best result to you, to the public, to anyone who is interested in listening to the music. So that is big focus. And again, I can't reiterate this enough. I'm completely okay with, maybe I even get the choir in there for a day and we record and then it's not what I wanted. I know already before I've even written a note of music that I'm totally okay with ditching all the music as well. So I know that sounds kind of crazy and there's money involved and it's like, well, maybe you have questions like, well, why are you trying to do this in the first place if you don't know if it's going to work out? That's kind of exactly why. If I knew what the result was going to be, it'd be so boring. Like if I knew, like, okay, let's just pick another album. Like Theatre by the Sea, for instance, from 2014. I know I could write 10 songs in that style. I know I could go with those exact musicians and it would sound very, very similar and it would be good. The music would be good, but it would be kind of the same as before and it would be sort of formulaic at that point because it was copying something and it would be sort of a foregone conclusion. Maybe you get a couple of outstanding performances in the moment, but there's no mystery to it at all. And this way, I know it's on a slightly bigger scale. We're traveling to the other side of the world and involving orchestration that I haven't used before as an artist. There are much bigger elements at play here, but the underlying, like the fundamentals of it are still like, I don't want to know. I don't want to be able to hear the finished product all shiny and shrink wrapped and, packaged ahead of time. I want to have a good idea. I want to realize some of my thoughts and some of my ideas and some of my music. But I want there to be that element of mystery involved. And that is sort of what keeps me coming back for more, especially when, there's a lot of talk about budget and stuff. And I've been talking about the pre-sale, which is happening. I keep doing this, wait until halfway through the podcast to mention that. That is also linked below in the description of the video or in the show notes if you're just listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. The pre-sale is going on. It's $25. Every single pre-sale of the album helps towards realizing the sort of the epicness of the project. It helps me to commit to doing it as well, of course, because I don't want any disappointed or disgruntled customers or fans. And it also, the whole thing speaks to the fact that I keep going back for more, regardless, as I keep saying, regardless of the cost and regardless of the outcome. So again, it's not a crowd-funded project. It's just involving the audience in the process a little earlier than the release date. And yes, absolutely, all the money from the pre-sale does go towards the album. I'm not putting gas in my car from album pre-sales. But yeah, there's no sort of financial goal needed to be hit in order to greenlight the project. The project is happening. And so far it's awesome. I got to thank everyone for getting involved. And the pre-sales have been awesome so far, and long may they continue. That definitely helps make it all possible. This is a big project. There are flights from Europe to Argentina, from the US to Argentina. There's a studio, an engineer, director of photography, film crew, mixing, mastering, promotion, artwork. There are a lot of layers, as I'm sure most of you, if not all of you, are aware. There are many layers. And kind of the success or not of the pre-sale really helps determine, how big the project ends up being. I'm not like banking money. I'm not planning on first of all, I'm not planning on making any money from the project. That's, I probably should have said that first. And there's no like, oh, well, we didn't use all the money from the pre-sale, let's put it aside for the next thing. No, it's like very much, this is the project. There may never be another album. I mean, I already want to make 2-3 albums a year for the rest of my life. But again, I'm fully aware that through unforeseen circumstances that I might not know about yet, there may never be another album again. So everything's all in on this, which it makes it exciting, and as the things slowly fall into place, like this flight thing, and then booking the studio, and then, we're going to get this musician and that person. And I just get more and more excited the closer it gets, and the closer we get to just being in the same room. So the most important part of the entire thing for me is just all of us being in that room, creating the music. And that's, I was kind of on the fence of whether to talk about this on this episode of the podcast, but this kind of like dovetails pretty well into something that's in the back of my mind. I've talked a lot recently about YouTube and kind of going all in on YouTube and getting rid of social media. And okay, I'm getting comfortable here. I'm getting a pillow. I'm definitely going to talk about it. Why not? Yeah, I've been really pretty vocal about ditching social media, going all in on YouTube, and why I'm doing that. I was on the Scott's Bass Lessons podcast recently. If you haven't checked that out, we talked for about 2 hours about the whole thing. We have actually big differences of opinion on a lot of things, actually, but what it highlighted on that interview was that the three, Ian, Martin, Allison, Scott Devine, and myself, they have differences of opinion as well, I think. Shit, it was a long podcast and it was a while ago, so it was a couple of months ago. I'm not remembering everything 100%, but it made for an interesting discussion, I think. And we have very different opinions on social media and what's required in 2023 and beyond and what isn't. And my Lane is obviously going with YouTube and starting this podcast channel, having the clips channel, and then really focusing on like shorter, high quality content on the main channel in order to grow the audience, sell more concert tickets, and make more tours happen. That's the ultimate goal, is to really have the option to be a serious touring artist in 2023 and beyond, which is not easy at all, I gotta say. Even with an agent now in Europe, it is very slow going and kind of slim pickings as well in terms of the offers that are coming in for shows. And we've had some great ones, and we will have a tour in November, which I'm really looking forward to. But it's not like, I don't have my free pick of every venue or every city I want to play in Europe, for instance. Despite having, I know you guys and girls are out there, despite having a lot of fans in a lot of places, I might not be able to sell 800 tickets everywhere, but I know the 150 to 200 ticket mark per night is completely doable. And that's sort of where I need to live right now. That's like really possible. You do 200 tickets at $30 a ticket. The maths work out quite simply. You do some sort of door split on a $6,000, take $6,000 across the door and you do a door split 80-20. Even a horrific door split like 50-50 still leaves you $3,000 on the night. It's not enough. It isn't enough to cover all the overhead if there are no hotels and no travel included. That all adds up, especially if the traveling party, I know I only have a trio, but my plan is to travel with a video person, so it's going to be a traveling party of 4. That's 4 hotel rooms every night at least $200 a night. So that's $800 of your budget gone. That's 4 flights or 4 train tickets. You guys can add up. It all culminates in quite a big overhead cost. So even though $3,000 a night, that's $21,000 a week if you play every night. That sounds like a fabulous amount of money. It sounds like an inconceivable amount of money. You're like, oh, you guys are a trio and you're making $21,000 a week. Well, not really. You could do a 75-25 split and make it more like $4,500 per gig for the band. And that is kind of getting more in line with being able to pay the musicians what they're worth. I'm a really big believer in that. I don't think that musicians on the road like that, playing at that level, should be making less than $750 a night, for instance. So I don't want to blow up anyone's spot or expose wages and salaries and all that kind of stuff, but I think $750, euros, they're kind of similar. The pound is a little bit different, but that's, I live in America, I operate in dollars. I think that is a reasonable rate for musicians of that caliber. Tom and Nico are world class at what they do, and I think they deserve that level of respect when it comes to financial compensation. And that's my goal. So already to spend $1,500 on 2 musicians per night, plus a video person who might be charging $400 or $500 a day, that's already $2,000 a day to pay 3 people, plus $800 for hotels. Potentially that's already $2,800. So you can see it starts to evaporate pretty quickly. And then you don't really want to play 7 nights a week. So you're not really making $21,000 a week. Maybe you're playing 5 nights a week, and it's a big soup of numbers and a big juggling act of like trying to make all the many moving parts work. And they do work out, and it is possible to make it work, and it is possible to do it with relatively smaller numbers of people like that. I think the sweet spot for me is 200. I think that's a great number of people. It's a great size venue for right now. Of course, I'd love to be playing theaters and 500, 600, 700, 800, maybe 1,500 here and there. Festivals, which are a completely different metric and, often pay far more money than a door money gig. But as you can see, just from this basic sort of verbal mock-up of what it takes to go on the road, it is possible to do it with 200 or just under 200 people a night at a ticket, price point of $30. I think $30 is reasonable. I'd love to hear your feedback on this. I've asked before, like maybe a year ago, and people were like, yeah, 30 is cool. I'd even pay 40 or 45. But I see some venues charging, 17 or 18, or some venues even charging 10 or 12 in Europe, which is, I think that's maybe if it's a jam session, okay, or if it's a really local act or something, I don't know. But like, you can't tour as a international touring artist and that be the cover charge. I think that's ridiculous. And then I see the extreme end of that in terms of smaller jazz clubs. Ronnie Scott's is not that small, but I think it's maybe 220 cap or 230 cap per set. Maybe it's 250, somewhere in there. And they charge up to 50, 55 pounds a ticket. Plus you eat, and it's like £100 night per person. And their door split is horrific. You know, they'll take £50,000 on the door easy in one night if you sell it out, and give you less than 10%. So I think that's that's a really shit deal. And I think that's like maybe more of an entry level, maybe a first timer kind of deal. But you know, they could do 50-50, which is still a terrible deal, and you could actually make real money then. Imagine walking out from one show with $20,000, for instance. That would be amazing. And that's not unreasonable when you consider the bigger picture and how much you're making. You know, that's just on the door. You know, if they make 40 grand on the door, you take half, but then they make another 30 just in food and drink, you know, because it's not a cheap place to eat. Really, it really kind of highlights how little musicians are willing to take without considering, you know, exactly what kind of numbers the venue is doing. And I don't give a shit about, oh, well, it's in the center of town, it's high price and rent and all that bullshit. Doesn't matter. You have to, you know, 10% of the door is not a fair deal. I don't care how high your rent is. 50% of the door is not a fair deal. I don't care how high your rent is, you know. So yeah, a lot of numbers moving around there. And then you throw in a festival or two, and maybe you can take 8, 9, 10 grand for a festival if it's big enough, and if you are big enough as a name. I am not now anyway. But you know, you look at, it's just bass players, Marcus Miller, Richard Bona, Victor Wooten. They're not messing around with festival fees. Those really help a tour out. I think it also kind of skews the numbers when it comes to smaller venues as well. And that musicians, I know I've done it in the past, like I'm far more willing to play, let's see, I mean, Jamboree rings a bell, comes to mind rather in Barcelona, because I used to play there all the time. And it was always 2 nights, but they paid the hotel, which was great. And Pierre would take us to dinner, which was fantastic each night. So there were definitely some nice benefits to that. But the gig didn't really pay much. It definitely didn't pay enough for the quartet. But it was always like a Monday, Tuesday sort of off night, if you will. So you were guaranteed food and hotels and a gig that did pay, even if it didn't pay that much, on what you might consider taking nights off, and it was in the same place, so you didn't have to travel. So there are those things where you do sort of accept a gig at a smaller venue because you love to play there, and then the festival or the bigger gig you have later in the week helps offset the money you didn't make, and you still get to pay everyone their salary regardless of the size of the show. So there are all of those metrics to take into account, and maybe the bigger gigs sort of skew what smaller venues feel they're able to get away with paying you. So yeah, it's a very interesting world, and it is not, the floodgates are not opening just because I have an agent. You know, I don't have the option of 50 different venues. Maybe I have the option of 15 different venues, and really I need at least 12 shows. So that's not really a lot of stuff to say no to. And even then, people are dragging their heels in terms of committing to it, you know, venue owners and promoters. So it's a long road. It's not, you know, me starting to do way more on the YouTube channel and try and grow the audience, which has grown by thousands and thousands of subscribers in the last couple of months. I can't thank you guys enough for that. And if you're not subscribed to the main channel, please go and do that. It really helps. Even just like hitting the thumbs up on a video, you don't even have to take the time to leave a comment. All of that really helps, because it helps show the material and the music to other people, to a wider audience. And that's when we get sort of that like critical mass. You know, I'm trying to get to 100,000 subscribers by the end of this month. It's already the 10th. This is a big ask. And when I'm only at like maybe 74 or 75,000, that's a lot of people to get cranky on the main channel between now and the end of the month. That was the goal that I set in January. And although I've added, I don't know, 8,000 or 9,000 new subscribers in the past couple of months, which is more than I normally do sometimes in a year, which is great. It's amazing. It's definitely not going to get me to that sort of tipping point, that critical mass where the audience says, oh, you know what, we kind of dig what's going on this channel, and oh shit, if we can convert 10% of the subscribers on YouTube to concert goers, to ticket buying concert goers who are like, oh wow, actually I love this and I want to go check it out live. Oh, and he's coming to my town. Holy shit, let's go do it. Like, that's the point. That's the point that people like, Adam Neely are at with he's got 1 point something million followers on there, subscribers on YouTube. It makes sense, If he can convert 10% of subscribers to concert tickets and charge $30 a ticket or whatever it might be, that's an insane income from touring. That's also selling 170,000 tickets a year. That's absolutely mental. So, even if it's 5% of subscribers that you can convert to people who want to come out to a concert, that is the focus. That has been the focus since I started this new push and will continue to be so. And that was something that I wasn't getting from Instagram or Twitter or Facebook at all. It was very, very minimal. A tiny fraction of 1% of the people that were supposedly engaged on the platform ever sort of made it out to shows. So the workload versus the reward was definitely in favor of ditching the social media and just going to a platform like YouTube, where I can really kind of concentrate on making sort of films and talking about things in longer form like I am here. And summer just arrived amazingly in early April in California, and it got super dry again. Thanks. My throat is not thanking the weather for that. But yeah, I want to hear back from people. We're still like obviously booking the tour like crazy, trying to get things happening. First is going to be South America, just a little bit. There are only going to be a few shows. I'm so close to being able to tell you when and where, like what venues and which days exactly. It's all going to be around the first week of August. I can't wait for that. I really need to work on my Spanish so I can do the tour in Spanish and speak Spanish to the audience and really have confidence with that. So that's going to be a side project over the next few months, is really figuring out some more fluent Spanish to speak to the fans in. And I'm screwed if we go to Brazil because I don't speak any Portuguese, but we're trying to book one show at the Blue Note in Sao Paulo while we're down there. It seems like such a shame to go all the way down to that part of the world and not stop in Brazil, as it is a shame not to stop in Peru and Bolivia and Colombia and just the whole toda Latin America. It's like would be amazing to play everywhere, but unfortunately just don't have the time, and in most places don't have the connections yet. So it looks like Buenos Aires, Montevideo and Sao Paulo, probably 4 shows total, and then the 4 days in the studio recording. And I'll give you so many updates on the blog. That's what that's all about. The Substack, the mailing list, whatever you want to call it. That will be, I can't wait to get these demos done. I would just wish I had more time right now. And going on the road, like being on tour, always sort of sets things back. And, number one priority is really sort of concentrating on the family once I'm back home, rather than being away working and then coming back and just ignoring everything. I really have to spend some time. Plus, I have family from the UK visiting, so it's like extra this week. So the whole thing about practicing away from the instrument could not be more important right now. And these voice memos, see, last night I had about half a liter of gas left in the tank. When I got into bed, I put the headphones in and I started listening back to a couple of things. This is the thing I posted in the Substack. But I just did a little looping solo with the harmonizer, and I'm really getting to grips with the sort of the pressure I have to use with the right hand. It's like quite a technical thing in order to get the sound out of it that I'm hearing, and that just came together in that moment. And it wasn't something I'd really been practicing or even doing on the road with Steve Smith, and for whatever reason it came together just in that moment at the right time for me to be able to sort of create the thing I was hearing. And that whole real versus feel thing kind of came into alignment more than it had in a long time. And it's nice to hear that. It is one thing, it's like really satisfying to hear it, like, whoa, I heard it in my head and then I played it. And then when I listened back like the next day, it was kind of the same thing. That's like, whoa, it worked. All these years, or like all this work, it actually worked. What do you know? So it's like, that's great. But then you go like, oh, well, shit, what do I do now? Like, that worked, and now I have to feel for it, and I know I can recreate that anytime I want. So it's now a pretty, of course, I've got to develop it, and I've got to repeat it, use repetition to ingrain that into my muscle memory a little more. But now I know how to do it, and I know I have done it. The confidence is there to work on it, and the motivation is there to work on it. But it's like, it's a known entity. So it goes back to that thing of like not wanting to really know what the album's going to sound like before I recorded it. It's this kind of the same with my playing. I want that. If I could find one moment like that every night, oh, could you imagine? You know, where you find something new. I mean, it's such a big ask. It's an impossible ask to find something completely new every night. And that wasn't even completely new. Yeah. It's a weird one. It's like a weird dynamic where I kind of resign myself to the fact that, yeah, it's going to be like 98% shit I kind of already know. But the more I can move that percentage down, the better. That's always what I'm trying to do. It's like, well, one night it's like, yeah, okay, it's 95%. I knew all this stuff. But then the next night, whoa, there was only 85%. And that's like a huge amount of headroom there to experiment and to explore. And sometimes, and don't get me wrong, sometimes I've been in the single digits of, I didn't know anything. And like, wow, I have 95% of room to play with right here. Wow, that's really freeing. And of course, that's has mostly been on my own gig because I get to call all the shots, you know. If you look at like the Vital Information Tour, for instance, as much as I said, when did I say that? Maybe in another blog post last week when I got back sort of assessing the tour, I was saying it feels like it's almost a co-band leader gig, even though it's Steve's band since 40 years. He's the band leader, he's the boss, his name, the buck stops wherever he is. But he gives us this amazing freedom to be creative. So it's one of the few gigs, kind of like Bob Reynolds as well. Like, we know each other so well, although it's Bob's name on the bill. The four of us as a band now have been playing together so long, we really are sort of co-band leaders in that sense, and he affords us the freedom to call tunes and to go wherever we want with a tune, and anyone can call a shot at any time basically, and nobody else's ego will get in the way and say no. And I think that's very similar with Steve, and it's quite rare. So But again, to all that to say, even in that amazing situation, you still know that like 60 or 70% of the gig is going to be quite similar to the way it was before, if only because the compositions are going to be from the same pool, from the same book. So it really takes being a band leader, and then I was going to say being brave enough, maybe being stupid enough, I don't know, to go on stage with no set list and no song choice and no plan. Then you really get into the single digits of repetitiveness. Then it's hardly anything is the same as the night before. And the times I've really experienced that, like the clean slate, the completely clean slate every night to create, is I think only happened as a band leader. And I would like to think I was creating that opportunity for anyone who plays in my band as well, that we have the option to do that. Because I trust my musicians, whoever it is I'm playing with me. Like, nobody gets on the stage with me in my band that I don't like fully trust. That's whenever you come out and see me. There have been times in the past where I've made poor choices, but like I highly doubt I'm going to make poor choices about musicians again. Maybe because I'm so prepared to just say, I'd rather not do the gig. I'd rather say no to the tour or no to the show if the musicians aren't right and if the creative situation isn't sort of optimal. I'm not 22 anymore where I have to say yes to everything, and I'm not like, I don't need that that sort of early stage experience that is so important in becoming a band leader. I have other things that I'm still learning about a band leader. Don't worry, I'm not. I haven't finished that class. That class is never ending, basically, and it's kind of amazing how much there is still to learn. I'm constantly amazed at, like, oh wow, didn't see that coming. Been doing this however many decades and did not see that coming for the life of me. I was like, oh damn. So it's always humbling. It always kind of knocks me down a few pegs, which is great. I think that's really healthy. It's not healthy to have like negative experiences that really like shake your confidence and prevent you from having fun or make you not want to go out and do it again. I think it's good to have negative experiences that you can see past. I think regardless of a missed flight or a pedalboard gets destroyed or a gig gets cancelled or any of those common things that happen on the road, you can sort of see past them, and it might hurt in the minute, maybe financially, maybe emotionally, who knows, musically. But you're going to get past it and move on. Even some of the big ones, like some really big disasters on the road, even then in the moment, it's like you're just hating life. And why the hell did I choose it? What am I doing here? You just sit in the hotel sometimes like, what am I doing here? Like, why did I make all of these choices that led up to this moment? That's a very real thing. And that has happened on more than one occasion. I got to be honest about that. That is, and I'm sure it'll happen again, I just am able to deal with it a bit faster now, and I can get to that point where I see past it and be like, oh yeah, well, it's shit now, but it'll be fine. Tonight, tomorrow morning, we'll get on the next flight, we'll go to the next gig, and it'll be fine. And you kind of get that. The band is like the repair kit, they repair it, you go back and you get lost in it again. And I've also thought about that from the opposite direction. It's like it's like that fix, maybe a drug or something, and then you do a little bit of it and it sort of tides you over until the next time that you need it again, regardless of all the negative effects it has on you. So there's definitely a balance to be found there, because you don't want to be doing it and it's the wrong thing to do. You want to make sure it's right and you're happy and you are, you're having more fun than you are experiencing pain. I think if it's always negative or negative a lot of the time, maybe you want to ask yourself some questions about why you still go back for the beating every time. But so far, like, despite all the weird shit that's happened on the road as a band leader in my career, it's been overwhelmingly positive, and here I am still doing it, and will continue to do so as long as I am afforded that luxury, and as long as people will come out and listen to it, of course. So with that being said, I would encourage you to go check out some tour dates at janekgwizdala.com. We have the whole East Coast tour of Vital Information coming up June and July, very beginning of July, and then just a month after that it will be recording time. And sign up for the mailing list. It's free to read. I post regularly. That's where this podcast goes out. Maybe you're already signed up and listening to this there at Substack. And that's where I'll be sharing all the updates and some demos and all the good stuff, as the title of the book says. And speaking of new books, God, we are so close to the Giant Steps book coming out. It's just been crazy with being gone on the road, but in the next 2 weeks that will be finished, that will be out. Cannot wait to share that with you. I've been using it. I was using it on the road, actually, the exercises, just to keep my chops in shape on days off. I wish I had time to show you this, the hologram microcosm. I wish it was mine also. A friend of mine ordered it from Europe to my place. He's coming to visit, and we'll take it home with him rather than shipping it to Europe. And I plugged it in for 5 minutes. That's something I think is a good test. Like, if anyone saw the Red Panda meltdown a few years ago when I was Twitch streaming, just like plugging a pedal in and it just not doing anything. Like, the microcosm, as complex as it is and as kind of weird as it can be, I guess, it really was musical without having to read the instruction manual. Just plug my bass in. I literally had 5 minutes last night before I was running out of gas, and I wanted to try it before my buddy picks it up and takes it back to Europe with him. And it really made some beautiful sounds in just less than 5 minutes of twiddling knobs, and it was quite intuitive, and it kind of says exactly what it does on the box, which is nice. I think that would be a cool feature on some channel or in some video. Can you get a pedal, complex or simple, to make cool sounds in under 5 minutes without reading the instruction manual? give me some feedback on that. The main channel is it's an interesting one. I'm going to have to make a dedicated video about this in terms of, I made that Federa video, and I guess it was somewhat controversial. I don't know. I didn't really think it was controversial. I thought it was just a little story. But it was like the best performing video out the gate of the entire history of the channel, and did really well and sort of boosted numbers through the roof and got thousands and thousands more subscribers. So, as with all the research I was doing into the various ways to approach YouTube and what to do and how to grow the channel, of course, I've been experimenting with the lesson style video, the pedal style video, the storytelling style video, all of which is a completely honest, creative process for me. I like talking about those things and creating those videos. But so far, kind of fallen a little flat in a lot of those categories. So I'm not sure what's going on there. Even with 75,000 subscribers, the last video I posted 2 days ago, and maybe it was because it was Easter weekend and people just weren't engaged, got like 4,000 views out the gate. And it was a really not an easy video to make. There were a lot of layers to it, and I even played slap in it. I thought, oh man, I'm really exposing myself here because I'm the Mr. like not slap guy. And it did, compared to all the other stuff, very poorly. So I'm still trying to find what the solution is for that. The podcast channel, this channel is super fun to do. And I've got some interview. We did a great interview with Steve Smith in Phoenix on the last night of the tour, which I'll put out shortly before our next tour to help advertise the dates and stuff. It was really fun to sit down and talk to Steve. And I got some really cool ones coming up. If you didn't check out last week's episode, that was with Jack Rohn of Noble Preamps. Great to talk to the man, the myth, the legend behind the world's most dominant bass preamp right now, it feels like. And some very cool ones, drummers and bass players coming up in the next weeks. So stick around for that. If you're not subscribed, please do so. We're getting close to the 1,000 subscribers and close to the 4,000 hours of watch time since I started this channel only a few months ago. So that's awesome. And the Clips channel is up there as well, Janek Gwizdala Clips, and posting a whole bunch of stuff. Some P-Bass stuff I posted yesterday with Jonah Smith and Blair Sinter and Bob Reynolds from a show in 2018. Just came across that on a hard drive. I was like, oh, that was a really fun show. It's nice to share some stuff where I'm not playing E to C and playing solos and chords and melodies and stuff, but just really just sitting there as a bass player and like nailing the parts to the wall, as is our job, fellow bass players of the world. And on that positive note, as we think about holding down the low end, I'll say goodbye and see you all on the next one.